And hello, everyone, and welcome back to the TBM crew. Today, I'm with Daniel J Volpe, splatterpunk and extreme horror author of 7 books. How are you, Daniel?
I'm good. How are you?
Yes, I'm very happy to have you here. And first off, congratulations on your double nomination on this year on the Splatterpunk Awards, right?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my novel Left to You and novella Talia were both nominated this year.
Well, that's amazing. And you've been published by several publishers. So you're a very prolific author.
Yeah, I write quite a bit. I have my laptop right here. I'm ready to go as soon as we're done and get some words in for the day.
You really have it on your blood.
Yeah.
For the people who's not familiar with the concept, how would you define the splatterpunk horror? How is it different?
Splatterpunk horror, it is extreme horror to me, but it has a message in it. So
Mhm.
for me, like extreme horror is that really violent blood and guts and gross
Yeah.
out kind of stuff, but without really a message. Splatterpunk usually has some kind of message in it. So certain books deal with drug abuse, domestic assault,
Yeah.
violence, rape, um, things like that. And then in the end, you see some kind of overall message, in that writing.
So
And
it's
everything
not
is
just for
obviously
the
done.
sake. Hmm.
Yeah, everything is done very graphically and extreme in splatterpunk as well. But
Mhm.
there's it's not just for the sake of it, like you said.
Exactly. Okay. Because I think it's a growing movement, right? Maybe a few years ago, I didn't see so many authors in the splatterpunk. And now it seems that it's a growing community.
Yeah, I've only really been around writing for about professionally, probably for just under 2 years. But
Mhm.
even in that time, it's grown exponentially with the rise of Godless and just a
Yes.
lot of the new wave of authors coming out, and people seem to really have gravitated towards it. And the readers have been eating it up, and they really like the
Mhm.
stuff we're putting out. So it's definitely grown a lot.
And now you've been writing for 2 years. What do you think that has changed in the process of your writing from the first book you wrote and your latest one? How have you evolved?
I feel like my stuff it's getting better because writing, like anything else, improves with
Mhm.
practice. So the more and more I write, the better I get. The more I read, the better I get, and I kind of just
Yeah.
see my overall progression. I've been sticking to a more regimented schedule. I keep
Mhm.
track of all my word counts. I try to make a certain word count goal per month, and I think that's really kept me on pace. And the feedback I've been getting from the readers
Mm.
obviously drives me to create more. So the more they read, the more I write.
Yeah. And how do you process when you have bad reviews? Because horror always sometimes have some.
Yeah. Honestly, I have a podcast I do with a couple other horror authors, Aaron Beauregard, Carver Pike, and Roland Bursey Jr. It's
Okay.
called Written in Red, and
Mm.
we're on all platforms. But we talk about we call those people like trolls, where they're out there trolling you and
Yes,
they're looking for
exactly.
an answer, looking for a response. So on our show, we always say, don't feed the trolls. We don't
Mm.
bother with them. Horror is
Yes,
horrible and it's horrific. So it's not
yes.
for everyone. And when I get a legitimate bad review and somebody says, I didn't like this
Mm.
because it wasn't for me, if I see it, I'll generally will almost like apologize, say, hey, I'm sorry you read this. I'm sorry you didn't enjoy it.
Mm.
Not everything is for you. Maybe here are some other suggestions for something that is a little more tame that you might enjoy. The people that
Mm.
come out and just say nasty things for the sake of it, I just ignore them.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Sometimes, well, when you read something or watch something that it's not for you, I think that doesn't stop you from leaving a good review sometimes, because sometimes people send me books or movies or games to try up. And sometimes there's a lot of things that are not for me because we all have different kind of taste, even inside of the genre. But that doesn't mean that I cannot see the good things that that book has. No,
Yeah.
so the bad reviews on horror are very relative, I think. As you say, I mean, it's not for me. Well, it's horror, you know?
Yeah. And
Yes.
And sometimes the bad reviews actually help, because if somebody reads my book and says, oh
Mm.
my God, it was loaded with sex and violence and I couldn't get through the first page,
Mm.
some people might say, you know what, I really like sex and violence. And if this has a lot of it, then I want
Yes.
to read.
Yes.
So,
Yes. When I see a review that says, this book is horrific, that's an amazing, I want to read it.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And which one is your latest release?
My newest book is Only Psychos. That is out from D&T Publishing. It's available now. And actually, right now, actually in Spain, on pre-order is my vampire novella, A Gift of Death. It was translated into Spanish.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay.
Yep, it's on pre-order right now through I don't know how to pronounce it, so I don't want to butcher it, but it's like Dimensions Occultus
I see.
in from Roberto Carrasco in Spain, and amazing publisher to work with. So that's on pre-order right now in Spanish language, A Gift of Death.
That's awesome. There's not a lot of books translated into Spanish. So that's also a way to expand to a very wide new audience.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I just finished writing a sequel to that too. So I've been in contact with him. And so if hopefully it does well in the Spanish speaking countries, and I can get a second book out.
And about your characters, are you attached to any of them? Do you have a beloved character of yours?
Yeah, probably my most popular character I have is a woman named Talia, and I have a book with her. She's the main character, and it's a cover where it's a woman licking a razor blade, and there's blood coming down her tongue, and she has bright red eyes, and she is this kind of like vengeful female character that I have in my books, and people have really gravitated towards her, especially women, because she is kind of that, she gets wronged and she kind of comes back for vengeance. And I'm actually in the process of writing a second book involving her. So she's definitely right now my favorite character that I think I've done. I'm very attached to that one.
And that's the book one of the books that has been nominated.
Correct. Yep.
Yes. Well, then that must be an amazing book. We'll need to check it out. What do you think that makes the difference between a writer and an author?
For me, a writer is somebody that just, if they're writing, like, they almost write without passion, I would say. So if you have like a job that entails you to write, so if you're writing news articles, you're writing manuals or something like that, or you're just writing, anything like that is mundane. To me, an author is somebody that you put your heart and soul into your work. You're trying to craft a story. You're trying to craft something that you want to entertain people with. So like, I consider myself both, I write and I'm an author.
Yes.
But definitely as an author, I feel like I put a lot of myself into these stories. And that's why I think some authors get upset with negative reviews, because they almost see it as a personal attack on them, when it's not. It's an attack on the work. But we put a lot of ourselves into what we do.
Yes, absolutely. And do you have any favorite scene that have you written, or a funny scene that you remember that you enjoyed writing?
Talia was a very fun book to write. Like that, I go back to that book. It's probably one of my favorite things that I've done. Yes. That was very fun. And my new book, Only Psychos, it was a little difficult because I juggled a lot of storylines, but there were some really cool scenes in that book. And the ending of that book, I absolutely love. Some people, it's been getting good reviews, and people have messaged me about the ending and like, oh, I can't believe you did that in the ending. So I feel pretty good about that one. So yeah, Talia and then the ending of Only Psychos were really a lot of fun to do.
Do you take things from your real life into your books?
Actually, it's funny you mention that, because Only Psychos is partially based on a true story. Oh. So the premise of the story is a woman, a mother with two children. They end up getting trapped in this snowstorm, and they go to this local hotel. They're without power, so they go to this hotel to try to, spend the night until they can get back home in the morning, and their husband can try to work something out to get the power back on. When I was a kid, this actually happened to us. My dad was working overnights, and my mom was at home with 4 kids. We lost power for the day, so it was getting cold. So she ended up taking us to our local hotel. which is like a Best Western or a chain hotel. But in my book, I thought to myself, like, what happens if they go to this local hotel or the chain hotel and it's closed, and they have to go to this other one where there's a bunch of lunatics that are spending the night. So
Yeah.
it's kind of how it was hatched.
That sounds sorry. That sounds so fun.
Yeah,
And which one is the most of your books? Which one is the most extreme?
It probably is Talia. Talia has a lot. It's about this porn industry, and it starts to go into like snuff film. So there's a lot of very graphic sex and a lot of very graphic violence. All of my books have extreme elements, and most of them I would consider extreme and splatterpunk.
Okay.
Left to You is a little more tame, but there's still a lot of violence in it. There's no sex in that one. There's just a lot of violence. But Awakened in Blood is almost erotica. Like Awakened in Blood's got a lot of sex, but Talia is definitely an extreme book.
So maybe Talia is the book that people should start reading you, it seems.
Yeah, if you like the extreme and you like that sex and violence and you want a really nice, like, cathartic, satisfying ending, then Talia is definitely the one. It's short. It's only a couple hundred pages, and it's very brutal. There's no filler. It's just, it starts off in the beginning and goes the entire way through. Yeah.
What do you think are your greatest influences?
I grew up. I'm 36, so I was born in '85. So I grew up in like the Goosebumps era. I've been a reader my entire life. So R.L. Stine obviously really kind of got me going in horror, but Stephen King. You know, when I was a kid, my dad would read Stephen King, and he'd leave the books on the table, and I'd pick them up, and I'd start reading them a little bit here and there. So I just really started reading Stephen King at a very young age, and then as an adult, in the more extreme stuff, I start reading Edward Lee, and I love Edward Lee's stuff. It's very, very, very extreme, but he's been around for decades. He's still writing. He's a gentleman to speak with, and I love his work. So definitely those three men probably.
I think maybe now we have many other different influences than when we were young. Because I think the social media explosion that is occurring now. How do you think social media has affected to the community, to the horror community? Is it good? Is it bad?
Oh, it's amazing. The horror community has erupted because of social media, and there are some poisonous sites out there and some poisonous pages where people are nasty to each other and they fight. But probably the best one out there is Books of Horror on Facebook. It's just a Books of Horror group on Facebook, and it's amazing. Not only that, but like I went to a convention recently in Virginia, and members of the Books of Horror were there. Like dozens of them drove out to see us and hang out. So that is great. I don't care for Twitter. I think Twitter is naturally like an aggressive kind of platform, it seems, but Facebook for the most part has been pretty good, and social media in general. TikTok is really making a big push in the social media world for horror. There's a lot of people that do very awesome videos on there and promote indie horror especially.
Yes, absolutely. And it's so fun. I think
yours is pretty good. I love watching your videos. Your videos are awesome. So.
I think to me and for the community and everything, I think TikTok is the perfect platform to be silly. You know, you can talk about things and share your work and everything, but you don't have to be as serious. And I agree with Twitter. I agree. It seems that there's a lot of people waiting for you to make a mistake or to something, right? I completely agree on that. Completely agree. And what do you think? Let's talk movies. What do you think about the current ones, the new ones compared to the 80s, Jules?
This may come as a shock to a lot of people. I don't really watch a lot of horror movies because
Mm.
my wife is like a scaredy cat. So if I have to watch them, I'm watching by myself. And I usually work in the morning, so I don't stay up that late.
Mm.
But I have seen some of the new ones. Um, Nothing will ever be like the '80s. The effects of the '80s are just amazing. And like I said,
Exactly.
for people in our generation that grew up watching those movies, like those were our movies. All the Friday the 13th, the Nightmare on
Yes.
Elm Street, all that stuff. Um, I kind of feel like sometimes the newer movies just recycle the same stuff over and over, and
Yes.
there's not a lot of originality. And there is some that here and there it is pretty original and it's pretty good. I know like A24, they've
Hmm.
been putting out some pretty good ones. Some of them are terrible. Like I
Yeah.
hated Midsummer. Some people hate me for that, but I hated Midsummer. That was terrible. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, I think that the originality. There's so much good horror fiction out there right now, especially in the
Yes.
indie world, that there's no need to recycle the same tropes. They just need
Hmm.
to look outside the box and look to indie horror, and they might find a real gem waiting for them.
Yes. I think also a big difference between the old movies and the ones they are making nowadays is that now they are so decaffeinated. They are so
Mhm.
light. I mean, the movies before, I don't know how to say, they didn't have so many limits or filters. Now I think they make them so light. They are not as horrifying. They are not as scary because, in my opinion, I think they get to a much wider audience.
Mhm.
Maybe people in fantasy can also like a light horror movie depending on how it is. So I think that they have lost this kind of, like, I don't know, any cheesy traditional horror, the Evil Dead, for example, the first one, it's so fun. That's very
Yeah,
fun movies, and now you cannot see anything like that, and that it's a bit disappointing to me.
yeah, and it is the same way with horror. I think that's why the indie horror scene has exploded the way that it has, because
Mm,
people were getting not fed up, but kind of bored with a traditional, let me go
yes.
into the store and here's the same authors, or here's a new author, but it's in the same vein as the other authors.
Yes.
And they were dealing with a lot of tamer stuff. And then we come along in the indie horror world and we're like,
Mm,
well, we don't have publishers, we don't have anybody we have to answer to. Some of us don't have publishers, and here you go. Here's the most brutal stuff we can come up with, and there's blood
mm,
and guts and sex and enjoy. And people have, and they've really
mm.
taken to it.
Yes, actually, the best movies I have watched recently are the underground ones, are the ones from the indie community. But absolutely, they are shorter and they are more homemade, as so to
Yeah.
speak. But they are much better, much better. Sometimes I get into Amazon Prime or these kind of platforms just to watch what they are doing nowadays because I have to be up to date.
Yeah.
And I'm so disappointed constantly. Maybe one of 10 out of 10 movies that I watch, I say, this was pretty good. And I'm thinking the generations that will only witness the new ones, they are missing a lot in the genre.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, like you said, with horror movies, they try too hard to
Mm.
please everybody or to please that
Yes.
wider audience. And I get it. If you have a budget on a movie that's $200 million,
Mm.
you want to make your money back.
Yeah.
So they want that wider audience. But even when we were kids, going to the movies, like I remember seeing like the Blair Witch Project, like that wasn't a
Yes.
lot of there was no
Mm.
money involved in that. Like, and that to me, like I grew up in a rural area, that movie
Mm.
scared the hell out of me. And
Yeah.
I was scared to go. I was in the woods all the time. That movie made me terrified. Um, but yeah, like you said, the generations growing up nowadays, they're gonna have some watered down horror that's very
Mm.
thin in story, and it stinks for them.
Maybe it should be our mission not to let
I
that
know.
die. Keep the.
Actually, it's funny. My
Mhm.
oldest daughter's upstairs watching the old "Are You Afraid of the Dark" episodes from the 1990s.
Ah, that's
So
good
she's
parenting.
yes. The little one's still sleeping, but the older one's up there watching scary shows. So I'm happy about that.
Yes. And you said that you don't watch much horror because your wife doesn't like it, but does she read your books?
She does. She says she can read the books without a problem. She said books don't scare her. She's never
Mm.
really been scared of books, so she's like, it doesn't bother her.
Not
She
so
doesn't like
visual.
the jump scares and all that stuff. She doesn't like being startled, but reading is slower pace. You can kind of see what's coming. If something bad happens, you can just close it up.
Yes.
But yeah, she's read all of them, and
Yes.
she enjoys them.
I think that what makes movies sometimes maybe not as scarier, because a book can really scare you, but I think it's the music.
Mhm.
Because in a movie, you know when something is going to happen, especially because of the music. My dad is one of those that he's watching a horror movie and the music grows and grows and grows in tension, and that character just goes down the basement alone and with a flashlight that doesn't work, and my dad
Yeah,
is like, but don't you hear the music, don't go there.
I
And
know.
I think that's the reason why. But and
Yeah.
I love talking to you, but time flew. Where can readers find you?
So I am everywhere on social media, Facebook at Daniel Volpe, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. I'm going to be putting out a website shortly that will allow people to get my books signed, merchandise there, some logo
Wow,
stuff.
okay.
If anybody has any questions, you can send me an email at danieljvolpehorror@gmail.com. I answer them pretty regularly. Social media wise, Facebook is my primary one, so you can send me a friend request on there. I generally take everybody. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm around.
Okay, amazing.
And
We'll
Amazon. I'm on Amazon.
We will also link everything below. And if anyone wants to leave a comment about anything that we said about the horror, the movies, and the splatterpunk growing movement, we'll be so pleased to answer everyone. So thank you so much, Daniel, for your time. And I hope we have a new talk when you got all your books, the new projects going on.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. Have a lovely day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.